Hi everyone, welcome back to another video for Phantasy Star Online-2 New Genesis. So I realise it's been a little while since I've done a New Genesis video, and I want to kind of address that with this video today. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a look at the roadmap that goes up to March next year, and I'm also going to look at some of the Steam figures for NGS and just try and get to the bottom of how NGS is doing overall. One thing that's become very apparent with NGS is that it has a very vocal player base, to the least. And one thing you hear quite often with the game is that NGS is dying, NGS is dying. And I want to kind of get to the bottom of, is that true? If there is any decrease in the population, is there any possible reasons for it? And also, has there been any indications of any surges in population? I'm trying to figure out why that's happened over the last few months. So the first thing we need to do is, we've got the roadmap open here, but we'll come back to this. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to look at Steamcharts over the last few months and just see how NGS is doing. So without further ado, we'll switch over to Steamcharts. So here we have the current figures for NGS. Now, I just want to note something first of all. This figure here of 943 playing an hour ago, this has been recorded on the morning in Europe, so because of that, a lot of the American player base won't be online, so this probably isn't really an indicative figure of the player base. So just bear that in mind, so we can kind of discount this figure for the time being. What I am interested in looking at though is the trend of the population. So I've got a 6-month trend up here, and you can see that honestly through sort of April, May, it's been very, very static. It's barely changed in player base. Now this obviously only does cover the Steam version, so we don't know what the console versions are like, but Steamcharts gives us a rough idea of how the other platforms might be handling as well. So you can see that through these months it's been very static. We did get a slight upsurge in population in June, but then what you can see is over the next few months, although the population does stay quite static overall, there is a slight downward trend over the next few months. Now, if we look at the actual figures themselves, so you can see here that around April and May, we actually got quite a big gain in population. But then since, more or less since May, every month on month, there's been a decrease in population overall. Now, obviously part of that is just going to be natural aging of the game. As games get older, they generally get less population anywhere. So you would expect some degradation of population, but you can see that it is becoming a bit of a trend this now. And we're now at a stage where our 24-hour peak as of recording is 1,525 players. The all-time peak we can ignore because that was pretty much when NGS launched, so you would expect there to be a lot of players there checking it out initially. But you can see, if we look at the peak players for the last few months, you can see that for May, we were averaging sort of 2,700. Because of the increase, it went up to about 3,200. But then from sort of June, July, August, we have seen this decrease month on month from 3,200 down to 2,300, down to 2,000. And in the last 30 days, we're down to about 1,955. So there is a definite downward trend for sure. Now, the next thing I want to look at is what could be the reasons for these downward trends. So what I've got is I've actually pulled up the update information for the last few months. I'm just going to go through it and try and pinpoint if there could be any reasons why the population has changed significantly. So I think we need to look at the April and May ones first, because you can see there's been quite an increase in population in these months. So particularly in May. So we'll go to April first. And what you can see is in April, the main things that we got was, we got an update to the seal, we got the update of tech art customizations. We did get the Dalian quest. This was the 4-player one, I believe, and the NGS 3rd anniversary event. So you can see there is a few things there that would definitely bring people back in. Particularly, I would say the Dalian quest, because it was a new data fault at that point. And also the all-ship matchmaking for Lucille as well. That probably brought some people back, and along with the tech arts customization. So I can kind of see why there was an increase in population in April. If then move to May, we had the Super Origin Festival. There's a few limited time quests. We got the Riser Scratch, Crimson Realm came back, and we got the 8-player version of Dalian. I think of those, the 8-player version of Dalian and the Super Origin Festival are probably the main things that brought people back. Because obviously the Origin Festival gave a lot of free items, so it kind of makes sense that people will come back to claim those. So those were the 2 months where the population went up. Now we need to look at the months where the population is taking a decrease and just try and see if there's any reason why that could be the case. So if we move on to June. So interestingly, June was actually when we got the new story quest, which was actually the best story quest we've had so far. We got Nameless City, Augment Transfers. So this is quite confusing because we got a lot of quite major stuff in June, but the population still went down. We did get the rank 2 version of Darkfall Solus as well for the 4-player version. What you can see though is, although we did get Nameless City, the way that it worked, because the festival was still going on, a lot of the Nameless City, honestly, I think within a couple of weeks, people were kind of stopping Nameless City because they had a lot of the Eridim weapons from it anyway. And it didn't really have much long-term appeal because Eridims were dropping so often, because I think they were boosted during that time, so you got a lot more of them. So there was a bit of a decrease in that month. If we then go to July, we got the Super Fantasy Festival, we got the Gal Griffin event, well, the Gal Griffin limited time quest, the new Duel quest, the part 2 version of Darkfall Aegis. This month is actually when Lion Strike got added as well. Now this, I can kind of see why people stopped playing. I mean, for me, the limited time quest was cool because I'm a big PSO fan, so it was cool to see Gal Griffin come back. But apart from that, honestly, Lion Strike is a fun game overall, but not everyone is going to be into it. Not everyone is going to want to play a card game. So I totally get why that wouldn't have brought too many people back. Apart from that, there really isn't a huge amount in that month, so I can kind of get why people aren't playing it as much. So that's over the last few months anyway. So again, if we go back to Steamcharts here, and we go back to this here, what you can see is, as I've said, although there is a decrease overall, there is a slight downhill trend, it is still fairly stable. Now, the reason for that is probably because of the die-hard player base. So there are plenty of players in NGS who will probably just keep playing the game because they enjoy it. There is a lot of people who really like the character customization and will probably just play purely for that. So there is a definite die-hard side of the NGS fan base who will probably just keep playing, which might explain why the decrease hasn't been as sharp as people might expect. But there is still an obvious downhill trend in these, even if it is only quite small recently. So the next thing we need to look at is looking ahead. Is there any reason, looking ahead to the September updates and the roadmap for later months, is there any reason why players who've lapsed their game time might come back to NGS? Is there anything to pull new players in? Because what we need now is we kind of need people to come back to NGS. So we either need players who used to play to come back again, or we need to bring new players in. So is there anything coming up that would convince those players to do that? So first of all, let's look at the September update. So for this month, so we've just got the high difficulty major target suppression for Dalian, so the rank 2 Dalian. That I could see bringing a couple of people back maybe. That's mainly going to be people who've got really high-end gear, who want some challenge in the game. Overall though, I don't really feel like these high difficulty quests offer enough to make people want to do them. I just genuinely don't think they're that popular. So I don't see that bringing too many people back, honestly. We do have a new limited time quest called Zenith Firefight, where we fight a boss from PSO2, I believe it's from episode 6. That again, it's cool to see something new come into the game, but it is also just another PSO2 boss, so we are kind of just pulling things from PSO2 back over. I think unless you're a big PSO2 fan, you're probably not going to be too bothered about that. There's the usual scratch tickets, which they're going to depend on what your preference is. We have a new rank added to Ordinal Tower. This I find really weird because Ordinal Tower tends to get an update, and within a couple of weeks, honestly, no one really runs it. Unless there is fantastic items, a real reason to run Ordinal Tower. I genuinely don't see many people doing it that much. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to see people do it because Ordinal Tower is actually quite fun. But there just really isn't much reason to do it. So we do have some more limited time quests. We've got some more cards for Lion Strike, a new collab scratch ticket. There's a new one of the kind of VR limited quests, which this one is based on the, it sounds like it's might be based on the time attack quests, which is interesting because the time attack quests, when they were added, was probably one of the updates that ran the least. The time attack quests literally were popular for a couple of days, if that, and then people just stopped doing them. So I am kind of surprised that they're running a limited quest kind of based on that. So this is what we're getting for September. Now, as a new player to NGS, if I was coming in as a new player, none of this would really convince me to come in. I mean, the bosses might look cool, but realistically, you're going to have to get to the current end game and have really good gear to even be able to do these. So these are not really going to pull any new players in. A lot of this is kind of aimed at sort of the higher level. For returning players, although rank 2 Dalian is kind of cool and is quite different from the regular one, I just don't see there being enough here to pull a lapsed player back in, personally. Unless you're a massive fan of Lion Strike or a big fan of Kaiju number 8, I just don't think this is going to be enough to pull someone back in who doesn't play anymore. So if we then go to the roadmap itself and look further beyond that, is there anything there that might pull people back? So we'll go on to this section here. So October to November, we get another rank for Steer, more limited quests, more urgent quests. We get Steer Crimson Realm, an expansion to Tekka, class level to 95, new item lab feature, another Idla collab, and something else which they haven't actually announced yet, as far as I'm aware, unless they announced it in the recent headline, which I'll be honest, I haven't watched. Now, for this, again, it's very limited quest based, and limited quests tend to focus on the higher level in the game. So I kind of find it unlikely that a new player would be able to do much of this, especially things like Crimson Realm. You know, that's all catered towards the high end of the game. Now, admittedly, with NGS, it doesn't take long to get to the end of the game because you do level super fast anyway. I just don't feel like there's enough here to bring new players in. And even for returning players, a lot of this is kind of reruns of things that we've had previously. Yes, it's the first time that Steer has had Crimson Realm, but we've had Crimson Realm in the other areas. We know how it works. It's just going to be the same thing, but in Steer. So it's honestly very unlikely, I think, that anyone who's lapsed would come back for this. The Tekka expansion, possibly, depending on how it's done. If it's a very big overhaul, which honestly I think Tekka needs, then perhaps that might bring some people back. I mean, I would definitely play Tekka if there's a big overhaul to the class. If it's more like some of the other overhauls, though, that were very minor, maybe not so much. Beyond that, we have more high difficulty solo quests. We've got a limited time Nameless City exploration expansion, a limited time urgent quest, some more tech cards customization, new Lion Strike cards, and a collab with a game from another company. And beyond that, we've got a colossal boss suppression, which I'm assuming is going to be another kind of Dark Falls, and some more limited time quests. What I'm noticing is, as has been the case with NGS since more or less launch, the game is very, very heavily built around limited time quests, which is great if you're at the end of the game and you enjoy the stuff that's in the limited quests. But for newer players, limited quests offer virtually nothing. There's really not many of them you can do, because what you find with some of them is that they will only have a rank that is for higher level players. Some of them don't even have low level ranks. So it does kind of limit who can actually do them. For returning players, I just don't see there being enough to bring people back, honestly. And I feel like we need a little bit more clarity with the roadmap of exactly what we are getting. The other big thing that's missing from the roadmap that I have mentioned before is there's no story quest, which we're not getting until, judging by this, until at least past March 2025. If you are playing NGS for the story, which admittedly is probably not that many people, you're going to get to the current chapter and then there's going to be a massive wait until the next one, which is pretty off-putting if you are there for the story. So it is a very strange design choice from the dev team, I think. So and it is quite off-putting for someone who might be coming back for the story. So lastly, the last thing I wanted to cover is there any other reasons outside of the roadmap that NGS might be struggling to get new players in or to keep existing players? And I've come up with a couple of possible reasons. Some people might disagree with this, some people might agree. First one is, honestly, I think some of it might be down to the name of the game. And to explain this, so the game is called Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. Now, the problem with that for a new player, if you're coming in, particularly if you're not familiar with the franchise, is you might think the New Genesis is an expansion to PSO2 because it's called Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. Because of that, you might think that you need to play PSO2 before you can play New Genesis, which obviously is not the case. You know, they are completely separate things. Although you can jump between them, you can just play NGS if you want to. So that could be a possible reason for confusion for people who are not familiar with the game. That might put people off trying it. I kind of get why they've done it, because there is obviously, with the story, there is sort of hints that it is linked to the events of PSO2. But I do feel like that naming convention could be confusing for people who are not familiar with the game. The thing it reminds me of a little bit is when Nintendo released the Wii U. There were some people who maybe not familiar with the console who assumed that the Wii U was maybe an expansion or like an update to the Wii. So they didn't buy the Wii U because they thought, I've already got a Wii, I don't need to get a Wii U. And I kind of feel like that could be something similar with this. Maybe not to the same scale, but that could be one reason that some people are off-put from New Genesis. The other reason is for older fans like myself. This game, and PSO2 as well, are so far removed from previous Phantasy Star games, they're almost indistinguishable. If you are someone who grew up playing PSO or PSU, PSO2 and NGS are basically nothing like them. There's almost nothing that ties them together. They are so far apart. And I do feel that if you really enjoy the gameplay of PSO and PSU, it's up in the air whether you're going to like PSO2 and NGS as well, just because they're so different. Now, the flip side of that obviously is for younger fans who are coming into the franchise with PSO2 or NGS, they're going to be more familiar with that. They would probably struggle going back to the older games, so it does work both ways. But I do feel like that might tie into it a little bit as well. Admittedly, that's probably not going to have too much impact on the game's player count, because I think a lot of the older player base who played PSO have probably moved on to other things. So that it could be one reason. But I do feel like, although the player base is stable at the moment, I think it is in, I'm not going to say it's in a worrying place, because it does still have a player base that is quite stable, and I feel like you can still get parties easily for anything when you log on. You can still get Lucille runs easily, you can still get urgent quests easily. You're never really queuing for long to get into those. And the lobbies, the busier lobbies, always do look pretty full. I do feel like the player base is still relatively healthy, but it would be nice if we could bring more people in. It would be nice to help try and grow the franchise a bit and bring new blood into it. And I feel that the way that the game is at the moment isn't really encouraging that. So I know this video has just been me kind of rambling a bit about NGS, but I wanted to get my thoughts out there. I just want to hear what you guys have to say as well. Do you feel that NGS and Sega are doing enough to bring new people into NGS? Do you feel that they're doing enough to retain players that are playing currently, or people that might have lapsed and are considering coming back? And if you don't think they are, what would you do to get people to come into the game? What changes would you make to try and get people to check the game out? I'm genuinely curious. I want to kind of hear what people think about this. It is kind of a sticking point with NGS. You will always get a lot of negativity, particularly on like things like the Steam forums. There is a lot of negativity about this game, and it would be nice to hear what people would want to do to try and get people into the game and to try and improve it. So I'll leave that one there. As usual, if you've got any questions or comments or anything, feel free to leave them down below. I'm always interested in hearing what your thoughts are about NGS and how things can improve. I do a couple of videos a week. Normally one is Phantasy Star related and one might be another Phantasy Star or potentially another game. I do 2 streams a week as well, which is on YouTube and on Twitch. So you can follow me on Twitch at Section Skylight as well. I'm also on Twitter at Section Skylight, and I also have a Discord where you can hang out as well, where we do play other games as well. So feel free to join us there. Yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed the video. We will try and do some more NGS content over the next few weeks potentially, but I just wanted to get my thoughts down for this one, just get an idea of where you guys are, see if anyone's on the same page. Yeah, so I'll leave that one there, and I'll see you guys in the next video.